faceless comedy. Hardy ha hardy ha hardy ha ha.
Good evening and welcome to the first of what's already been called our third series. In the news this week, at Buckingham Palace, Prince Andrew holds auditions for Fergie's replacement. Viewers of Iranian television discover the whereabouts of Gerald Kaufman during the election campaign. And in Eastern Europe, good news for the Czech car industry as Skoda unveil their new Dormobile. On Ian Hislop's team this week, a satirist in the traditional sense of the word, and by that I mean he's met David Frost, John Wells. And on Paul Merton's team, someone who recently appeared entirely naked in the situation comedy That's Love, but he'd like to make it absolutely clear that he was only prepared to do it for a cheap thrill and in no way for the money, Tony Slattery. So, round one beckons, and we duly oblige by showing each team one piece of news footage to identify. Ian and John, whose is this trouble and strife?
This is a traditional tribal ceremony of divorcing someone because you think they've been trying to bump off your friends. It's part of the long-running miscarriage of justice of putting the wrong Mandela in jail for 26 years.
Yes.
New song come out, Jail Winnie Mandela.
But she's also had a string of lovers, hasn't she, allegedly?
Oh, really?
Yes, Reg Varney among them.
That's true. That is true.
That's not allegedly.
Who was it that alleged that?
Mavis Nicholson.
Yes, it's the end of the Mandela's 33-year-old marriage, 27 of which he spent in jail. It was obviously the strain of not being apart that finally told. There's always the same old reasons, isn't it? A younger woman, the relationship going nowhere, the wife murdering a 14-year-old boy, and ordering the assassination of the local doctor, allegedly. In his statement, Nelson referred to her as Comrade Numsamo Winnie Mandela, obviously a little pet name he has for her. He issued a joint appeal with President de Klerk to cut violent crime in South Africa by at least 20%. They could do that by locking up his wife. Paul and Tony, one or two sights for sore eyes.
Well, no.
This is the, oh, hello.
It's Tony Slattery again.
Who was that standing behind the Queen?
Like Frank Boff.
This is an exhibition. It's an artist painting these pictures of the royal family in the nude, and there's been a, great
Chelsea Arts
Club. That's right.
Good.
Yes.
It's a controversial exhibition of paintings by artist Don Grant, was his name, at the Chelsea Arts Club, showing various royals in the nude. There were several small studies of the Queen and Prince Philip in the altogether, plus a nude rear view of Fergie. That was actually a mural. Ian and John, spot the millionaire here.
Oh yes, this is the dog.
Yes.
Don't talk about Barbara like that.
No, it's Dog Millie, and apparently it turns out that Dog Millie has written its memoirs and made much more money than Mr. Bush made out of writing his, and reveals, in fact, that Dog Millie was not only in charge all through the Gulf War, but actually appointed Dan Quayle.
Oh, it all becomes clear. It's the hardly surprising story that President Bush's autobiography has been massively outsold by the autobiography of his own dog, which has earned over £500,000. The book deals with the early morning romps in the garden, his daily squats behind the hedge, and his canine subservience to Barbara. And the dog's book deals with much the same thing. Paul and Tony, a choice of viewing for you now.
Oh, that one.
Ian? No.
I've no
I
idea.
haven't got a clue.
No idea.
Jonathan Ross putting on a red nose after
So
seeing
it's
the
a comic
ratings.
relief. That chap was a European because he had a funny name. And
Yes.
he looked a bit of a greaser. Is it anything...
Without being offensive to our European
He
listeners.
looks a bit of a greaser.
Yeah. Is it anything to do with Brussels and bureaucracy and comic relief?
Berlusconi, he's the man who's importing porn by satellite, isn't he?
He has Italian housewives taking each other's clothes off on...
Yes, well,
Peter Cook watches it regularly.
I'll give you a point for recognising who it was. It's actually the announcement of Channel 5, due to be transmitted in 1994, but on a frequency currently used by 3 million video recorders. The ITC, we're told, have estimated the cost of retuning them all to be £200 million. Incredibly
Fascinating.
Fascinating. He knows it all now.
It is.
Well, there's always trouble for somebody, isn't there? 2.5 million.
What's Jonathan Ross got to do with 2.5 million viewers?
He's ready.
I'm so glad it was you that said that. Along with Jonathan Ross, bidders include Silvio Berlusconi, Italian media mogul, whose European channels are known for a cheap mixture of game shows, soap operas and soft porn. His first project is believed to be something called The Price is Right Up Your Brookside. All of which brings us somewhat alarmingly to the end of round one, at which point a look at the scores reveals that, well, Paul and Tony have a rather limp 2, and Ian and John have a sturdy 5.
Goodness me.
It's generally at this stage in the proceedings that we like to foist an absurd image upon each of our panellists for them to contemplate in the privacy of their own brains. Paul and Tony, here's yours. Ian and John, there's yours. And in the ensuing 25 minutes, you're duty-bound to dream up a poignant, amusing and Complaints Commission-friendly caption. And while you're doing that, we'd like you also to take part in the rest of the show, beginning with this, our headlines round. One piece of tabloid nonsense each to identify and explain. Paul, yours first. Why there's a burning desire for a Vindaloo.
Oh, yes, I do know it. This is, somebody's discovered that there's something in chili which is quite addictive. There's an
Not the country.
No, in the, Thank you for making that abundantly clear.
It's worth a point, though, don't you think?
You've got a nerve calling somebody else a greaser, haven't you?
It's very hard to take an insult from someone whose haircut is done at an MOT centre. That's a point.
Yes, you were halfway through an answer before you
Yes, I was halfway through an answer. There is
It's the
something
dream
addictive.
ticket.
There's something addictive in chili, which is the food, not the country, which makes people hungry, which is the thing rather than the country. I've lost the will to live.
I think we should get an extra point for using the word endorphins, because that's the thing. These are these pleasure hormones which are allegedly in the Vindaloo.
Yes, I might deduct it, actually. Endorphins, but yes, it is the discovery by scientist John Prescott. That's where he got to during the election then. That curry is addictive, absolutely right. Apparently its spiciness causes the body to release pleasurable pain-killing chemicals. So now underneath the arches at Waterloo Station you'll see loads of down-and-out shooting up chicken biryani. Tony, make of this what you will. And I want a quickie.
That's Dan Maskell talking about Anne Hayden-Jones. No, that's the divorce. Anne, because they're royalty, they filed for divorce, and 10 minutes later they got it.
2 points. It's yet another collapsing marriage, that of Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips, whose divorce went through this week. With Fergie and Andrew splitting up and all the speculation about Charles and Diana, the Queen may have to wait until Edward gets hitched to find the perfect royal marriage. Could have a long wait. John, a whimsical pun for you.
Yes, yes.
Rain, rain, go away.
This must be the famous acid rain, Lady Althorpe.
Princess Diana used to sing that when she was a child.
What was
she
that?
used to sing, rain, rain, go away, don't come back another day.
How interesting.
So much was the love between stepdaughter and stepmother.
The man with his ear to the royal bottom.
And Barbara Carlton was there in the background as well.
Doesn't quite scan.
Good thing we
so well,
didn't see a
does it?
picture of her with no clothes on, Ducky. That would have been really grisly.
Extremely unpleasant thought, which we wipe from our minds. It's the complete removal from Althorpe House of all traces of Rain Spencer, Diana's wicked stepmother. She notoriously flogged off the family treasures in order to redecorate the place in a style that was, according to friends of the family, like a tart's boudoir. Obviously to make Major Ron feel at home. Ian, what is overpriced, over the top, and over here?
Elizabeth Taylor?
Oh, that's absolutely unwarrantable.
Would that I could say it's true, but it's not.
Could I mean, is it Euro Disney?
It is, yes.
Because it could have been the Chippendales, couldn't it, or something like that?
I thought it might be an American headline of Mrs. Thatcher. She's overpriced. $7,500 for that piece in Newsweek. All she had to do was say, John Major's a lunatic. Who appointed him? You did, you old bag. But anyway, no one
That's
asked
quite
that.
enough about Mrs. Thatcher. It's the rather under-publicised Euro Disney, Paul was absolutely right, described by French commentators as a cultural Chernobyl. It seems a bit unfair on the Russian nuclear industry. Disney's sanitised image took a bash with the revelation that prostitutes had installed themselves in one of their hotels. So new rides at Euro Disney suddenly took on a new meaning. £50 for it goofy style and £100 for a straight Donald Duck. All of which cartoon capers brings us to the end of round 2, and the scores are visibly as follows. Well, it's now Ian and John who have a flimsy 7, and Paul and Tony surge onwards with 8.
I thought we left.
Fusing connections round, in which the teams are brutally obliged to make sense of meaningless montages of unconnected film footage. One per team. Ian and John, unravel this slot.
Is he dead?
Esther Ransom. Remember him?
Yeah. Balloon going up. Oh, I remember. The military Johnny.
Yes. Oh, there's Millie again.
Oh. As the heir to the throne.
Very good.
The governorship of Hong Kong.
It is.
And a list of people. I didn't know that General de Lotbinière was up for it.
Yes, de la Billière was put up.
Oh.
He's got a reputation for standing up to dictators, so they won't choose him.
I think
Geoffrey Howe,
Yes.
his idea in the first place to hand the whole colony over. It's another good idea. Chris Patton, the man who handed over Cheltenham to the Lib Dems, so he can give Hong Kong to the communists.
He's got them all written down, you know.
I know.
Yes.
Tom King, sorted out Northern Ireland.
Or not. It's the candidates for the governorship of Hong Kong, led by the favourite David Owen. The colony is being handed over to vicious Chinese torturers in 5 years' time. Presumably the government's hoping Dr. Owen will stay out there for 6. Owen is regarded by the Hong Kong people as unsuitable, although when it comes to 5 years of political confusion, ending in a sad but predictable surrender, he would seem to have more experience than most. Paul and Tony, here's your chaotic collage.
Smith looking a bit lost.
Well, it's Labour leadership contest. Ken Livingstone and
I've got the elephant.
well, cornering the elephant vote there, really important.
Yes. It could also be, I think it's because of the Union song about the call for a Scottish referendum on devolution for Scotland.
You're going for extra points here, aren't you? You can't have any because it's not right.
Well, it is the Labour leadership.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was the obvious one, but there's also been a call if you'd read your newspaper's angles.
Which, of course, I have, Tony. Which one in particular?
All of them, which
Oh, right.
say anything worth reading, but you obviously stuck to titbits.
It's the battle for the Labour leadership, yes, currently being waged by the man who masterminded Labour's tax policy, the man who created Neil Kinnock's image, and the man who made the GLC what it is today. Absolutely nothing. And so with round 3 behind us, we find ourselves not unreasonably at the foot of round 4, our scarcely vaunted archive round. Ian and John, a mystery voice for you to determine.
What sort of ambitions do you have, parliamentary ambitions?
In the long term, yes, like any politician, I want to be Prime Minister, of course.
You want to be Prime Minister?
Yes.
How do you see the timescale of these personal ambitions?
15 years.
I mean, that's an extract from Crime Watch, I suppose. And the police were looking for Jeffrey Archer. It's got to be him.
No.
Interviewed leaving Victoria Station.
It's an interview.
They didn't find the envelope.
Yeah.
I think it might
either.
be Robert Kilroy Silk. But that, of course, is only a thought, and I would,
And I think-
would like to go any further.
I think it might be Portillo.
Before we actually reel off all the politicians that we know, maybe we should have a look.
What sort of ambitions do you have, parliamentary ambitions?
In the long term, yes, like any politician, I want to be Prime Minister, of course.
You want to be Prime Minister?
Yes.
How do you see the timescale of these personal ambitions?
15 years.
That's not Robert Kilroy Silk, that's Peter Wingard.
Yes, well done, Paul. It was too close to you. It was Robert Kilroy Silk, pre-suntan, back in 1974, revealing his ambition to be Prime Minister by 1989. Not an unreasonable ambition at the time, were it not for the fact that Labour failed to win a single election from then on. Nowadays, in contrast to being Labour leader, he spends most weekday mornings talking to various misfits and outcasts about the mess they got themselves into. Not much difference, really, is there? Paul and Tony, what happened next for you?
In central London, more photographers were waiting outside the aptly named Queen's Snack Bar for Sarah's arrival at the office. Also there were watching policemen who've only just started making regular appearances.
They got a divorce. That was 10 years after that. That's what happened next.
Did she suddenly go skiing?
You don't know. No, that was a good guess, though. It was. This is something to do with a photographer falling over or being knocked over or something.
When a huge Texan arrives and grabs her.
Yeah.
I thought there was the cleaner found these photographs of her and Steve Wyatt on top of a sofa, on top of a cupboard.
Very
They were on
strong
top of the
cupboard.
Yes.
How extraordinary. I think we'll maybe have a look at exactly what happened next.
Also there were watching policemen who've only just started making regular appearances.
Yes, absolutely right. It's the press falling over themselves to talk to a young Sarah Ferguson. Back in the days when the Duke of York was her local, and the civil list was just a twinkle in her eye. So at the end of that round, a cursory glance at the neon numbers tells us that Ian and John have a brave but incompetent 9, and Paul and Tony have a magnificent 14. So we effortlessly cartwheel into our odd one out round, 4 apparently acceptable candidates to consider. Which one is the Livingston? Paul, you're historically first in this round, so...
Right.
Bruce Gingell, TV enthusiast. Boy George, enthusiast of a rather different kind of TV. The Dalai Lama, and a llama.
Boy George, is he painted those? He must have painted those eyebrows on, like Groucho Marx used to paint on a moustache. He used to paint on eyebrows. The llama.
How can you possibly get it so quickly?
Because all the others are Buddhists.
I'm laughing because you're absolutely right. It is the llama.
I knew that Boy George was, and the Dalai Lama, being sort of like Tibetan spiritual leader, is kind of expected to be a Buddhist. Yes. And I imagine the llama wasn't.
The llama's C of E.
Yeah. The majority of them are.
Bruce Gingell was famous because Mrs. Thatcher apologised to him, which makes him the odd one out in the whole world.
Yes, Bruce Gingell is a Buddhist who is actively opposed to all forms of violence, which seems strange considering he inflicted Wincy Willis on us for 6 years. Tony, get your laughing gear around these. Phil Collins, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Freddie Starr, and Neil Kinnock.
Well, Neil Kinnock and Phil Collins are slapheads. No, I don't know. Is it the tax exile thing because Collins and Lloyd Webber and Starr are staunch Tories and they'd leave if Labour won and all that stuff?
Absolutely right. Yes, it is. It's
what a rock and roller you are, Phil, eh?
Yes. Yes, I look forward to hearing his next song about the homeless. It's Neil Kinnock, as all the others pledged to leave the country if Labour won the election. Neil Kinnock said he'd stay, which is probably why they lost. Freddie Starr threatened to emigrate, little knowing the boost he was giving to the Labour Party by doing so. And Andrew Lloyd Webber decided he'd leave rather than pay any more tax, shortly before spending £11 million on a painting. He says he has an interest in painting, but he'll have to write another musical to pay for it. Let's hope it's just a passing interest. John, no show would be complete without Robert Maxwell, Paul Keating, Australian Prime Minister, Big Mama Alice Fraser, and Lord Carnarvon.
Keating was the one who searched for Braille messages on the Queen's bottom during her visit to Australia. And I think Big Mama also interrupted. Did she not interfere with the Queen when she was visiting downtown Washington?
Yes,
that's right.
In a manner of speaking.
Now, the question, Maxwell, did he ever interfere with the Queen?
Well, he stole the Royal Pension Fund.
Perhaps Lord... What did you tell me he was called?
Carnarvon.
Lord Carnarvon.
One of our most famous peers.
One of our most famous peers is probably the only one who's not interfered with the Queen.
Absolutely right.
Is that right?
Yes, it is. Well done. 2 points.
Why him, though? Why him?
Well, because all the others have in some way manhandled the Queen, whereas Lord Carnarvon has, of course, never had any physical contact with the Queen at all, and the fact that he's Prince Andrew's favourite uncle is entirely without significance. Robert Maxwell put his arm around the Queen at Commonwealth Games, probably checking her back pockets for cash. Ian, 4 elfin beauties for you.
I'm very interested in this Carnarvon story.
Ted Heath, Chris Patton, Bobby Robson, and Mr. Punch.
They're all funny except Punch. Next.
You wouldn't be biased at all.
We've said goodbye to them all recently, except
Sir Edward Heath, who has just taken the Order of the Exotic Garter.
they're all losers, aren't they?
Yes, that's right. They are losers.
So who's the odd one out?
The only one who isn't out of a job is Sir Edward Heath. The others are all out of a job by common consent of their peers, whereas Heath is staying in his job despite the common consent of his peers. Which brings us spinning to the end of this round, at which point it gives me no pleasure at all to tell you that Ian and John now continue their bid for defeat with 13, and Paul and Tony have a gleaming 18. And so we saunter smugly into our final missing words round. 5 headlines per couple, each with 1 or 2 words missing. The team's job, in an ideal world, is to guess the missing word or come up with a better alternative. In the time-honoured tradition, he who comes last goes first. So, Ian and John, that means you, I'm afraid, if you'd like to step up to the oche. Gaddafi ponders offer to escort who?
Agency.
Is not right.
Jason Donovan.
Is not right either. Suspects is the right answer. I'll give you 1 for prisoners. Next, Prince of Wales links population rise to what?
His mother.
Not true either.
Is it poverty?
It is poverty. Extraordinary that you should know that. Well done.
Well done.
I was going to say Chris Quentin, but that's not right.
No, next, Tories play Hunt the what?
It's Speaker.
It is Speaker. Incredible over on my
Amazing,
left
it's the guy with the big wig in the middle. I could have told them that. They're never too bright, that long.
The answer is Speaker, very good.
That's
Next,
Edward Heath, isn't it?
Thatcher to become what in dissolution honours?
Sane.
Peer is in fact the answer. And lastly, new DPP seeks what?
Similar. Is that dirty fellow?
Not as such.
Car parking space in King's Cross area?
I think I'll quickly tell you the answer
Lenient
to this
laws on curb crawlers.
court reform. Well, you're almost on the way there. I'll give you a point. Yes, that's absolutely right. So, here we go. Paul and Tony, here are your headlines. Party members concerned over Smith's what?
Ludicrous spectacles.
They are, but
Sanity, health.
Campaign.
Crisps.
It's a short word.
Very good. Yes, that's the one.
not actually
health
true.
campaign.
Age is in fact the right
Age.
answer. Next, Archer blows $1.5 million on a what for his flat?
Inflatable horse.
No,
It's like a jacuzzi or something.
Hang
no,
on, what's this? Archer blows £1.5 million on
Rembrandt.
a something for his flat what?
it's facelift, in fact. Next, rather dull answer. MPs' wives vote no to what party?
Dildo and Swarfigo. Plausible, isn't it?
You keep your private life out of this. It's not correct, I'm happy to
Grumpy looking
say.
man over there. Don't like that at all, man.
What about Tupperware, Tony?
What do you think? Is it women's? Women's?
Late is in fact the answer. Late party. Next, Major given what by Thatcher?
Good seeing to with a set of Queen Anne chair legs.
Had to be that or, a warning is in fact the answer. And finally, RAF crew save goat from...
Archer.
Lonely Welsh farmer.
I think we're getting further and further away from this one. Cliff is in fact the rather obvious
Now that
answer.
is libel.
Very good. Very good. A fine entertainer indeed.
Yes, let's just hope he isn't watching. All of which, uneducated guesswork means that this week's runts of the litter are Ian and John with 15, and this week's leaders of the pack are Paul and Tony with 23. So, a heartfelt well done to our winners and a sincere good riddance to our losers.
Thank you, dear.
But their chance of redemption is at hand because we still have our caption competition. Ian and John, what about yours?
It's, Chris Patton is saying, and in a minute, John, I'll tell you what you can do with it.
Alternatively, Patton saying, it's a present from Mrs. Thatcher, and it's ticking.
Paul and Tony, what did you think of for this?
Mike Tyson escape bid fails. Salman Rushdie undergoes plastic surgery.
Mid-morning snack arrives for Roy Hattersley.
Moderate candidate to bid for Labour leadership.
Edwina Curry proved right.
On which delightful note, thank you. We say thank you to our guests, Ian Hislop and John Wells, Paul Merton and Tony Slattery, and I leave you with the news that the royal family has unveiled the hat which Fergie is to wear at Oscar. Or even at Oscar.
Is that the little-known racetrack meeting? Oscar. That's quite confusing because it sounds a little bit like Ascot. If you think they'd changed their name.
I think the joke would have worked better with Ascot, actually.
It's like that motor race
do a quick
meeting at
rewatch.
Bronze Hitch, isn't it?
I've got one about the Bishop of Durham now. The Bishop of Durham personally takes part in the church's new look go-ahead Easter pageant. Medical history is made as a woman gives birth to a man on a bicycle. And finally, the hunt continues for the 9-year-old mystery bag snatcher. Good night.
Just so you know, tomorrow night's guests are Joan Bakewell and Donna McPhail. That's at the same time, 11 o'clock on Wednesday. Don't say I didn't tell you. Next tonight, Forensic Files.